for truth.
Welcome to Duality Check, the podcast where two brothers embark on a journey through the realms of scientific inquiry, the mysteries of the past, and the uncharted frontiers of spirituality. Join us as we explore the wonders of our world and beyond, all while embracing the roles of curious bystanders rather than experts. Together, we'll unravel the tapestry of existence, blending the dichotomies of knowledge and wonder. Get ready to question, ponder, and delve into the dualities that shape our understanding of reality on Duality Check. I'm Drew.
And I'm Dean. And
welcome
this
to
is
episode 36.
Episode 36.
That's right.
Yeah.
Cool.
Heck yeah.
So
I am back from Atlanta.
Off our 1 week
trip.
hiatus.
Mm-hmm.
You guys probably wouldn't have noticed. Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, we talked about it, but
Yeah. So yeah,
totally.
we got a little bit of a jumble of things. They're probably all going to correlate though. It's a lot of UFO stuff.
Yeah.
I'm going to show Dean the stuff I mentioned last time on the crop circles and give him a little more details on that story.
I've got there was a Lue Elizondo episode that dropped on Joe Rogan, and then also last night there was a new Jessie Michaels video that came out, and I haven't had a chance to go all the way through that one because those both dropped yesterday. So I've got a couple notes from the Jessie Michaels one, and then I would expect I'll probably have more for next week on that.
Okay, we can definitely dip into it, at least give people an idea of what it is about.
Yeah, for sure.
All right,
cool.
So actually we probably should have queued this up before we started, but go to our Instagram.
Okay. On it.
Go to our messages, and there should be ones that I liked. Oh wait, we might be able to see it. I think I liked it from our account.
I don't know where to look for that.
It would just be like next to the image itself. Here, I'll just send them back to you real quick.
Okay.
Oh well.
Well, in the meantime, while you get that going, I'm going to talk about an interesting, another one of Anton Petrov's videos.
Oh, okay. What's this one about?
I'm not going to play this one because I didn't notate any timestamps or anything, but I just want to talk about it.
Okay.
It's a really interesting one. And I'll leave a link in the show notes for you guys. But this one was about a paper that came out. Ooh, maybe I can just get the link to the paper. A paper that came out where the study was showed that there's evidence that the name that you have influences the way that your face evolves over your life.
The name.
Yes.
That you, like your name.
Your name that you're given. Yeah. As you grow up, your face changes. Like they essentially did some research showing basically asking people to give a person's name based on the photo of them. Mm-hmm. And after all this study, they found that there is a higher than chance percentage of people getting the names right
just by looking at them.
Just by looking at the photo of the person. And they're able to do it across all different ages and stuff, and they found that it doesn't take effect until you get old enough. So as you're young, your face hasn't had time to fully adapt apparently, but as you get older, you look more and more and more like a Drew, and I look more and more and more like a Dean apparently.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a psychological thing that it's not maybe not physically be happening, but it could be somehow be, I don't know.
The only explanation they were able to come to is that there is some sort of physical change. Like there's a Drew look, whatever that means. And that people with the name Drew have more of that particular Drewness to the look of their face.
Interesting.
Than people who are not named Drew. I wonder if they've broken down and studied that with twins. That's crazy, though.
That's something to think about.
Yeah.
When you're laying awake in bed at night.
Yeah. That's a pretty crazy study.
All right, so there's a funny little song I wanted you to play from Instagram.
Okay.
Go to our messages and just scroll up a bit, and you'll see a guy with a piano in a pool. There you go.
Okay.
I thought this would be.
You get really busy with sending these. Okay. All right, so here is whatever this is.
Life doesn't have a meaning, and if there's a God, then he doesn't look like me. And I'm just a member of the current apex species, but there'll be another when the humans go extinct. We've only been around 200,000 years of 13.5 billion years. How can we think the pinnacle is here? Isn't that arrogant? There's a couple 100 billion trillion suns, and we act like it all was made for us. There ain't no way that we're the only ones. I'm not important, and neither are you. So let's do whatever we wanna do. Bask in our cosmic insignificance. Soak up this blip we're living in, cause nothing matters anyway. Isn't that great? I'm pretty sure.
So this is I Am McConnell music. I'll leave a link.
Yeah. I thought that was fitting.
That's funny.
Should have used that as our intro. Reach out to him, be like.
That's interesting. I don't like
the cynicism.
Yeah, I don't like taking it to like a cynical place necessarily.
No, I know. That's where I was like,
But
this is where he gets cynical.
Yeah. There's two sides to that coin when you realize like the vastness and like your insignificance of size, right?
Right.
And that's definitely an experience that sometimes goes along with like hallucinogenic experiences, religious experiences, or even just like big nature experiences. But
or even just some sort of cathartic experience, or whatever.
But it can like with certain of those experiences, it can go along with like a sort of connectedness, like a oneness, which is a little more of a positive spin on it.
Yeah, I think the cynical ending to that is a little much. But
I mean, it's funny.
I thought it was funny.
It makes for a good comedy song, for sure.
He sounded like, did you ever hear any of Bo Burnham?
Yeah. He definitely reminds me of Bo Burnham.
He has that same style.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's good.
Let me pull up my notes. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to? Or do we got anything else? Actually, hold on. Go back to our messages. There's like one more I think I really wanted to show you.
Sure.
Today. No. That's Bashar. Have you seen Bashar?
This?
That's the channeler.
No. Let's check this out. Is this audio?
Yeah. I don't think there's any music, so.
Okay.
I said, you all assume you have a single timeline that goes from your past to your future. In fact, what you're doing is this. You are scanning all of the frames of reference of all the parallel realities that are relevant for the theme that you chose to explore in this life. And you are drawing down and plugging in and unplugging from and connecting to and disconnecting from all the frames and parallel realities that are relevant for this theme. You are constructing, literally, moment to moment, billions of times per second, constructing what appears to be a single timeline made up of frames, one after the other in a certain order, from thousands of parallel reality connections. You are doing this all the time automatically. When you have an inspiration, Oh, I just thought of this. It may be coming from a parallel reality person that you're plugging into that is having that experience. And therefore you can get the inspiration because their experience in that particular reality is relevant for the theme you chose to explore in this reality, in this timeline. You're constantly merging with timelines to build the timeline that is relevant to you. I said.
That's interesting.
Yeah. He's got a lot of these. It's just interesting to hear and how consistent. I don't know.
Bashar.
He's one of my. He's one of the ones that I found, like, started watching a long time ago, and it wasn't like a watch him all the time. It was more like I just subscribed and like you see his videos their videos every once in a while. But
do you say he's like a channeler or?
Yeah. So the guy, I can't remember the guy's name. I have to look that up, but. The guy has a completely different voice and like.
Oh, okay. So this is the channeled character, Bashar.
Yes. Bashar is the channeled character speaking through Daryl Anka.
Okay, but in that clip, that was Bashar's voice.
Yes,
gotcha.
Yes.
It's like what was that lady who was in What the Bleep and her channeled entity? It would start with an R.
Schwan or something like that.
There was,
Bashar. Something like that.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay.
But I watched him. This is when I first saw a video of his, is probably like over 10 years ago.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it for decades now.
Yeah.
It's just interesting to think that, I mean, sure, he's, famous now. So he's doing talks and all these things and he's asked to go places. But so that's a perk to just continue it, obviously.
Right. Which skeptics will use as
but also
not to believe him because he's just a grifter making money off it. But
also if you allow yourself to get to the point of believing, right? If you get over that hurdle of like, I believe, or I don't, or at least you're open your mind to the possibilities of all this, spiritual stuff and, psychic phenomenon and all these paranormal stuff. Once you accept that and you think of this, like it's not weird.
Yeah. I'm weird. I'm like on a weird cusp, right? Like I've, like that's kind of the theme of the show. Like we got one foot in each world there, right? And I still have a ton of respect for science. And in a lot of ways, my brain automatically goes like into skeptic mode and like I want to see some proof and evidence. But at the same time, I'm becoming more and more open, like. And really, like, the reincarnation thing is the thing that has, like, blasted my doors back open.
Yeah.
I mean, I've already been open on, like, UFOs and stuff before that. But, like, yeah, the reincarnation topic has kind of blasted the paranormal side of things back open for me. And
drawing a lot of, like, connections between a lot of those topics, too. Like, there's a lot of connections between all these different topics.
But now that I find myself more open-minded, like when I am confronted with a character like that, like it almost gives me like a little bit of panic, right? Like I'm like, I want to hear what he's saying and I'm interested in what he's saying, but like I
keep it at arm's length.
Yeah. So I think like the approach I would have is like to just listen, let it wash over me and like reserve judgment, just hear what he has to say.
Right.
Well,
without like trying to like jump right into it. Cause like, that's where the difference is. Like whether you're able or like if somebody is charismatic enough and gives you enough of the right answers that you need to hear at the right time, you could join a cult, like,
right.
And that's where like you want to maintain that distance.
I never want to be, like the whole saying, like, don't be like being open-minded is good, but if your mind's too open, your brain will fall out. Right. Yeah. Like it's kind of that, like there's a risk of like, once you become open-minded, like I feel myself like teetering on an edge sometime where I want to believe something, and that wanting to believe like
scares you.
Yeah.
It scares the other part of your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get that.
I also don't want to reflex against that and like just not hear something. So like I think the right approach is to like take in the information and reserve judgment, you know.
Yeah, I've never been one to like just hear something for one time, even if it's something that I really enjoy or like makes sense and hits my, hits all the feels at the right time or whatever. Maybe it'd be some quote with some music behind it or something that you see scrolling through, whatever. Like, and then just like jump on the bandwagon of whatever that person's spewing. Like, and even outside of that, like same thing with religion. I was never fully like brought up in a church either, because by the time I was
we had already kind of backed out of
for the most part. Like I remember going to church, but I was like going to kids club, and like they were like trying to keep me in the kids cry room in the back where they just kept all the kids because they were loud.
I did the whole altar boy thing. A lot longer.
But not that. But that changes your memory and like it adds to your story. So like that's always something that you remember. Yeah. So that's might be another reason why too, right? Like you keep that arm's length because you were a part of that at one point, right?
I don't know how hard I believed in Catholicism ever, really.
But it's got to do something to you when you're that young and you're in it.
For sure. Like, no, I think I had a belief in God, right?
But as far as like the strong like religious ties to that idea,
like all the Bible teachings and all the like stories, like I don't know that I don't have a memory of ever like believing it all as if it was just a fact of life.
Right. Okay.
I always thought they were really intriguing stories.
Thought provoking and stuff.
Yeah, and I liked the mythology of it,
mythological nature of it.
Yeah, like I like the thoughts that it makes you have a lot of times, but I don't know how ever like, I don't know that I was ever like a super deep believer.
But you also were around people who might have been, right? Too.
Sure. But we were, we went to Catholic school, right? And so like a lot of the kids I was surrounded with, like we would be forced to go to church like once or twice a week during the school week. Plus, our family would go on Sunday. And then like I would be involved in like processes. I would do Sunday school at certain times. And so like I definitely internalized a lot of the stories and traditions, but I didn't necessarily like us kids, our attitude at school talking to each other about it. Like no one.
It was like a school. Like it was these kids and they were all in the same situation and you're all making the best of it and you're all having fun and like poking fun.
You know how like when you're a kid and like parents kind of just put things on you that you don't fully understand or necessarily believe. Like, you're just going with it.
Yeah.
So I think it was kind of that. But our distancing from the church was, that really abrupt. Actually made me go hard the other way and become like full blown atheist after that for a while. And then I went down like the science route and like
almost
full like atheist skepticism sort of route for a long time. And then I got back into like the more, Graham Hancock and forbidden history and mythology and ancient civilization and aliens.
It's full circle.
And I've flip-flopped a lot like ever since, Yeah.
Well, we'll find out in April 2025. Or when was it? When was it supposed to be?
The Red Star of Regulus.
I think it's next year, right?
Well, it's when the Red Star of Regulus raises over the Sphinx on the solstice.
Something like that.
Yeah.
We'll have to refer back to our notes.
Yeah.
Cool. That was a good topic. That was a good talk. Okay. We got some time.
Okay. Well,
lost a mic.
Should I start on the Lue Elizondo stuff?
Yeah.
There we go.
Do some maintenance.
Yeah. All right. Cool. So I've got a bunch of timestamps here, and I got the first one queued up. So in general, this episode does a lot of, they do a lot of just like overall discussing like philosophically about the topic and stuff. I've picked out a few of the areas where either I feel like Lue is giving definite something hard evidence that's interesting to talk about.
More than he's ever given before?
Not necessarily, but and then I've clipped some other areas that I think are just like really good, thought-provoking parts of the conversation that I think we'd both like to comment on and discuss. So let's go to this first bit, and here we go.
F-16. You know, this is not a Chinese aircraft. This is something different.
Right. What is the oldest video footage or film footage that you have ever seen or heard?
Civilian or military?
Doesn't matter. Like, what is the oldest where it's like, okay, what the fuck is this? What's the oldest stuff that's compelling?
Ooh.
So the point is, what I'm trying to get at is a lot of people point to the possibility that there's some sort of a secret program, some sort of secret propulsion, gravity-based, whatever it is, that's completely different than conventional propulsion systems that the U.S. government has, and that they're operating these drones. And the problem with that is always the Kenneth Arnold sightings, the Roswell, the sightings from a time where that technology just wasn't available at all.
Joe, I'm so glad you asked me that question. It just so happens I brought you something.
Oh. When the glasses come out, you know it's getting serious.
No, it just means I'm old.
Me too.
Yeah. I'm going to provide you a document here. It's a short document, but the portions I think are highlighted that you're going to want to pay attention to. And let's see here. Okay. So if this is just for you, and if your audience is interested, it's this paragraph here you're going to want to read. And then it's the last one that's highlighted. And then take a look at the date and the subject line.
This is it right here. Jamie brought it up here.
Oh, great. Okay, yeah, so
which one do I want
paragraph 6 right now. So if you want to scroll down to paragraph 6, there you go.
This summary of observations of aerial phenomenon has been prepared for the purpose of re-emphasizing and reiterating the fact that the phenomena have continuously occurred in the New Mexico skies during the past 18 months and are continuing to occur, and secondly, that these phenomena are occurring in the vicinity of sensitive military and government installations.
And if you want to go back to like paragraph 2, there you go.
The highlighted part?
Yeah, the observers of.
The observers of those phenomenon include scientists, special agents of the Office of Special Investigations, the U.S. Air Force, airline pilots, military pilots, Los Alamos security inspectors, military personnel, and many other persons of various occupations whose reliability is not questioned.
And now scroll to the top of the very top of that document. And that
it says that it was determined above that, the summary of observations of aerial phenomenon in the New Mexico area, December 1948 to May 1950.
And the date of that document, if you scroll a little bit higher, you are going to see the date of that memo.
1950.
Yes, sir.
May 25th, 1950.
Right.
It says that it was determined that the frequency of unexplained aerial phenomena in the New Mexico area was such that an organized plan of reporting these observations should be undertaken.
Right.
So this is the beginning of Project Blue Book?
So this is the recognition that we have a serious problem over our sensitive military installations. This is nothing new. This is not 1970s reverse engineered technology or some sort of special technology.
1950, they're talking about
we
this.
We had just broken the sound barrier, and we had not yet entered into space. And we have these things that are performing in ways that, frankly, we can't replicate. I've brought a few more of these later on to emphasize that point you just brought up at some point if you're interested.
Yeah.
But it highlights that these are official government documents through official government personnel raising the alarm bells, just like we did in OSAP and ATIPs. And so this is nothing new. Now, if you want to look at this from an adversarial perspective, our government has already said that's not ours. Right. If you look at a 1950 Sabre jet, for example, it wasn't even supersonic. And yet these things that we are observing in some cases are doing, I brought some more documents here, multiples of Mach and doing velocities and doing things that we frankly could not do back then. And frankly, we still can't do in some cases. But temporally speaking, the only two countries in the world may have a chance of doing something like that would be Russia and China. And now in 1950, where was China? It was in the middle of a famine at the time, and where was Russia? Russia was trying to develop the atomic bomb and still was using horse-drawn carts for a lot of their military operations. So temporally speaking, it doesn't make sense. This is the analogy I've used before, Joe, that it would be like sort of the Carter going into King Tut's tomb for the very first time in the 1920s, discovering King Tut's tomb, and when he goes in, he finds a fully assembled 747 jet.
Yeah. That's a good analogy.
Yeah. So I thought that was a pretty compelling section of the interview.
Because he's talked about this before, but it's now he's brought the document.
Keep your mic a little closer.
Sorry. He's talked about this before, but actually having the document and really emphasizing the date and what they're talking about.
Right.
Like these are reliable sources.
Yeah.
That they're pulling from. These are military operators and agents and special agents and Los Alamos workers,
like government people communicating to government people. Like this isn't a public memo, right? Like this is someone in the government trying to convey to someone else in the government, like, hey,
we're seeing these things over our installations,
over Los Alamos, where the Manhattan Project happened and where they're developing the hydrogen bomb, and all the top secret military research is happening there, and these things are just coming and going. It's
Have you seen the video of that? Of a rocket being launched and then a UFO or something coming out of nowhere and like shooting beams at it and then it falling out of the sky. I don't know if it's real or not, but
I don't know if it is either. If it's like a
there's been a lot of reports.
I've heard it. I've heard it talked about as a testimony.
Anecdote on it.
Yeah. As part of the Disclosure Project, I believe, is when I first heard about it.
They're seeing them over these military installations with missiles and
but
they're
like
interacting.
Because Joe's question here is really pertinent in that, if you see a craft today, unfortunately, we're in a position now where like this stuff has been going on so long, like you can't know if what you're seeing is like reverse engineered,
now,
right? Reverse engineered. Like if this is a U.S. craft, it very well could be,
right? Yeah, I mean, because we know that the stuff that we don't know about that's coming out is more advanced than what we already have, and what we already have is pretty crazy.
Right.
So we know that it's possible now that whatever they have is probably very advanced, and what a lot of people are seeing now could be that,
right?
But it doesn't include this, whatever they were seeing in the 1950s, because we did not have this, what we have now then.
Right.
So yeah, it's very fascinating to have that document.
Yeah, that's a good one. All right, let me grab that next section here. Oh, it's just right after this. Let's just keep playing.
It doesn't make sense. Temporally speaking, they did not have that technology. So is it possible, and I'll be very careful what I say, that the U.S. government has some sort of exotic technology? Well, my answer is I sure hope so, because we want to have an advantage over our adversaries. But in 1950, that wasn't the case.
Right. And do they have any film of these crafts from New Mexico?
There is film of many craft, and not just New Mexico per se, but over many military installations. Here, I got another one for you. I'll provide you. You don't want to have to waste your time reading it, but I think you'll appreciate this. Take a look at the date of this and who it's to and who it's from, and I think you'll find the subject line very interesting.
Okay, which one? What part am I reading here?
Just to highlight a portion, so you can see the top of the document, who it's from, who it's to, and the date, and what the subject line is.
Director of Special Investigate. What does it say? It's hard because it's all scratchy.
Yeah, it's an old reproduction of official government document. Bottom line, it's a document from J. Edgar Hoover.
Oh, I see.
From the director of the FBI,
General, Department of the Air Force, the Pentagon. Yeah, J. Edgar Hoover. Director of Federal Bureau of Investigations,
And read the subject line of that memo.
Flying. It's hard to read.
He doesn't have his glasses on.
Flying discs, I should say. Flying discs over the savannah. There's a sensitive facility that we had where we were doing atomic development. And
flying discs reportedly seen in the vicinity of the something river plant.
Savannah River Plant. Yes, sir.
Okay,
that's correct. And so that's
Atomic Energy Commission,
and the date of that being 1952, right? So
this is verified.
That was released by the government. That is those are all official. All these are official U.S. government documentation that anybody can pull up anytime they want.
Did they let you see any of these ancient films? These films from the 1950s of these things?
So great question. Our focus was really more modern time. It was more like taking a picture of where we are now. I mean,
but wouldn't you want to just like if you really think this thing is from somewhere else, the best example of it definitely not being ours is something from the 1950s. Right?
Sure, and anecdotally, that's great. But keep in mind, on the backdrop of national security, when you go to a general and you say,
clean this up, by the way.
Yeah,
it's crazy. It's like half the things are blotted out and scratchy.
That's
so yeah. So yeah, and imagine, right? So after they had this, and then they tried to smear it. That may have been when we actually made contact.
Right.
When we actually made contact, and some deal was made.
There's a chunk coming up where he starts talking about like why it was classified and why it was kept hidden, and I find that pretty interesting. So the thing about this, like documentation as evidence, like this does prove that people in the government were talking about these things, right? But like to like a Neil deGrasse Tyson's point, like a government document is not proof of a scientific phenomenon happening. And so like there is room to be skeptical in there. And then there's another argument from a totally different point of view where like the skeptic or like the even more conspiracy UFO side where like Project Paperclip had already happened. We had already imported a bunch of these German scientists, and there was all the rumors and documents about the Nazis having developed technology like this. So even if it was in the 50s, like even still, that's not necessarily proof of them being extraterrestrial, because what if this is just seized, Nazi research projects?
Or the Nazis really did get away and moved to Argentina, and they took their crafts with them.
Yeah.
That's how they got away so fast.
And so they started flying around, checking out the state of what everyone else is doing. They're flying over the U.S. military
and
bases
they know that
whatnot.
they know that we captured a lot of the scientists in the UFO abductions. Maybe they had a way to communicate, or they were purposely hindering their research, or
checking in on them to see like what they're giving over. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting. I don't necessarily believe that one's
crazy conspiracy. Right
there.
There.
Totally. But going down the Nazi angle is pretty interesting, like diving into like all the occult and like weird tech
science
research they were doing. Like they were into some weird shit. Anyway, let's we're a little bit over, so let's take our first break here. This is good. Stevie Nader. It's called Leave With It.
We're back.
Welcome back. So, let's hop into this.
Give me some more Lue.
Next bit. Here's some more Lue for Drew. Here we go.
Probably should do something about it.
So if we go back to the history of the debunking of it, like the Project Blue Book stuff, J. Allen Hynek, after he had left Project Blue Book, he became a proponent of UFO disclosure. During Project Blue Book, it was his job to essentially dismiss everything and to come up with some sort of a reason, swamp gas, mass hallucinations, whatever it was, to attribute all these sightings to something that was very easy to explain. Did they ever is there any documentation or any discussion of why they did that, why they chose to debunk everything?
Yeah, my understanding is if you have to look at where America was at the time they were doing these investigations. It was at the height of the Cold War, right? And, despite what some people think, the Cold War wasn't very cold at all. It was pretty hot. And we had Russia and the United States engaging in these proxy wars. Neither side wanted to let the other side know what we had and what we didn't know, right? So if you have these UAP coming in and out, the last thing you want to do is tell the other side, broadcast, this is what we've learned from it, and more importantly, this is what we don't know about it, right? And so both sides were keeping this very quiet, but there was an interesting agreement at the classified level, I believe in the late 60s, where there was this relationship with the United States. We were putting up our Northern Tier radar system to detect then Soviet Union ICBMs, and they were doing the same thing, right? Because none of us really trusted each other. But we trusted each other enough to say, look, before you hit that button, if you see something coming over the horizon, before you hit that button and launch, give us a call because it might be a UFO. Right. And we don't want to start World War III because either side mistakes a UFO for an ICBM.
Right.
And that's how serious they took the topic. I mean, that's real. That's a real memo that existed between the United States and Russia. Mm-hmm. So that is an indicator how much both sides took this topic seriously.
Mm.
Yeah, I want to see that. That would be fascinating to see that correspondence.
But that's a really interesting point. I've never heard that explained that way.
Yeah, just because they know that they've been around their military installations and they have probably had to talk people down from the button at one point because of it. And at least I think there is a case where there was a lot of false alarms happening.
There was one case where there was a blip on a radar or something that looked like an ICBM, and this was on the Russian side. Yeah, this was on the Russian side. And everything about their protocol dictated that he was supposed to launch.
He should have hit the button, yeah. And
he didn't. And it turned out to not be America launching a nuke at them. Right. And this freaking one man basically saved the world. Oh, wow. Just insane. But
imagine that much pressure.
Yeah.
Everybody around you telling you to hit the button.
Yeah.
And you just having a feeling and waiting.
Yeah.
I mean, imagine you make that wrong decision and it hits. Ugh.
Yeah. But it's a good point about the general secrecy about it too. It is hard
at that time
for us in our generation, right? Because
to understand that tension.
We grew up as the Cold War had ended while we were children, right? When the USSR collapsed. Mm-hmm. I mean, you were a baby.
I was probably, And it was in the early 90s.
Yeah. Or,
late 80s.
91 or 89 or something like that.
It was late 80s or early 90s,
and so you may not have even been born yet, but it was before I could really remember, right? But, so our entire lives has been post-Cold War of our living memory, right? Mm-hmm. And so it can be hard when you get in these topics to recontextualize just exactly what that was like.
Right.
And to get yourself in the headspace of what these governments were in. And when you enter the UFO phenomenon into a Cold War scenario, the secrecy starts to make a lot more sense. I still disagree with it, but it makes a lot more sense. Like you understand why it was treated that way.
Yeah, it makes more sense, especially at the time frame for this. Like, it makes sense for them to debunk it. And then it makes sense that they found something out or made some sort of deal or like something happened where they decided to keep it a secret.
Right.
Like, it benefited them more to keep it a secret because of whatever they found out. It getting out was it not getting out was more important than telling the truth to the American people. So I don't know.
So like I've been sort of interested in like, in politics and like libertarianism and my like studies in that field of things. And the people from that side of things, they're constantly complaining about like the neocons, which are the neoconservatives, this group of conservatives that entered the Republican Party that were actually formerly Democrats. But from them, you get people like the Bushes. You get people like who was Junior's Secretary of State, Donald Rumsfeld, and Dick Cheney types. Like, these are like neocons. These are the war hawks. These are the people who gave us these like forever wars, the war on terror and stuff. But it's sort of a neocon thing to like, they, after the Cold War, didn't want the Cold War to end. Like, even though the Cold War was over, they kept pursuing policies like as if it was still on. Right. Like, kept encroaching on like Russian territory and all that, and
trying
like,
to instigate more and more.
Well, maybe, I mean, if you want to give them the benefit of the doubt, is like maybe taking advantage of the fact that the USSR collapsed
and was
to
weak. Yeah.
Expand our defense capabilities to the point where even if they got going again somehow, they would never be in the same position to be a threat to us, type of thing. So if you want to, give them the benefit of the doubt, like, you can read it that way. But so maybe in a similar vein to that, like, these same sort of programs and the secrecy associated with them, maybe for the same sorts of justifications, like, are like being continued, right? So
yeah.
And we're finally, and there's been multiple waves of this over the years, but we're finally like getting to a point where more and more and more of these whistleblowers are coming out, and like there seems to be a real rift within the establishment, within that, intelligence apparatus who has access to this information. And some of them really believe that the people have a right to know.
Do you think we're going to get something meaningful in the next 10 years?
I could honestly see it going either way, and I think part of it has to do with there's already some momentum, and these people are already like pushing the disclosure. Like, the disclosure is happening; it's just happening very crawl, testing the water, slow pace.
But it could be shut down at any time. It seems like it's still so fragile.
Right, and that's part of like why it's just testing the water, right? Like, you test the water because if the water's too hot, you don't get in, right?
Well, and also you get to like, we just don't want to get to a point where we want to get disclosure soon enough. For those of us that believe there's something to be known, whether it be what we imagine it to be or not, before it can be used against us.
Yeah.
Before it can be completely used as some sort of technique or tactic for some sort of like false flag thing in the future, or some like some power grab in the future.
Or even worse, like, what if some government bureaucrat decides that like just on their own without involving the
system,
public
the system.
and the actual, like, with no accountability, deciding that these entities represent a threat and getting us into a war with them.
Sure.
Right? Like, it doesn't just have to be like this false flag scenario. There's lots of ways where they can use the information and the access that they have in order to manipulate world events. And, like, I just, like, we deserve to know,
Yeah. Either way you slice it, we definitely need to know this information.
Yeah.
I think we can all, sure, there might be a period of freak out and there's going to be a lot of people that just like lose it over this. But I think in the long run, full disclosure would benefit mankind.
Yeah.
Because it's just like that study of, people, I don't know if it's a study or not, but the idea of like, once somebody breaks that record or sets like the bar higher,
right,
and people know that that's possible, and people just start expanding on it immediately, in a sense. So once we know that it's possible to have that technology,
it's that 4-minute mile phenomenon.
Yep.
And it's also, like, as soon as you know it's possible to travel,
the limits
in that sort of way, then you as a scientist who's developing technology no longer has to contend with that lingering doubt in the back of your head as you're trying to work out.
Is this even possible?
Right.
Yeah.
It is. You just need to find how
just figure it out.
Right.
Put the pieces together.
Right.
Yeah. All right, let's continue what we got here.
Okay. Here's the next bit I picked out.
If I was a military person, right, I would look at this from the perspective of there's three options. They're good, they're neutral, or they're bad. So let's go down this road for a second. Let's say they're good, right? Well, we got nothing to worry about. The problem is there's nothing to suggest that they truly are benevolent. People say, well, they're like, they don't want us to nuke ourselves. Well, I discuss it in what I wrote, that there's no data to suggest that. They didn't stop us from dropping atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki and vaporizing 500,000 living souls. They didn't stop us when we started developing nuclear weapons from the atomic age. They didn't stop the proliferation of nuclear weapons. They didn't stop the testing in the Nevada range of atomic and nuclear weapons. And now, how many countries have atomic weapons and nuclear weapons? A lot, right? They didn't stop Chernobyl. They didn't stop Fukushima. They didn't stop 3 Mile Island. So to say that they're here to help us, I'm not sure there's data. People say, well, in Minot and North Dakota and Montana, the UFOs came in and they interfered with our nuclear weapons and they brought the entire Echo flight offline. Which, by the way, I have the government report on that if you want it. But in Russia, a lot of people don't know, they turned them on. Right? So that's equally scary. They're interfering with our nuclear capability, whether to attack or to defend ourselves.
So when you say they turned them on in Russia, this is a Russian report?
Yeah. So this is I don't know if you remember the congressional hearing that occurred last year where with
David Grush?
Nope, the other one with Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence Ronald Moultrie and some people from the Navy, and I think it was Congressman Gallagher that asked the very specific question, and he said, "Are you aware of UFOs interfering with our nuclear capabilities?" And the response was something like, "No, not really familiar with it, never heard of it." And then the question was, I think, re-asked specifically at these locations, and the government's response was, "No, not familiar with it." Well, here's the actual report from the Department of Defense. This is the actual intelligence report that was released through FOIA. There's a gentleman out there who runs a site called the Black Vault. His name is John Greenwald. He's probably the world authority on Freedom of Information Act, and he has a wealth of data that is available to the public that he has received from the government. This is one of those documents. This is the document that our own government has no idea apparently exists.
I like how they write it in all caps.
Yeah, that's the old reporting.
So, obviously, there's some people that don't want this to be released, and obviously, there's some people that think that the general public has a right to know.
I believe so. That's been my observations and my experience.
Well, that makes sense. Like when everybody says the CIA does this, like, okay, who? Who in the CIA?
I didn't
right?
finish though the other part, right? So if they're not here for if they're not friendly,
Right.
that leaves them neutral like us,
Right. Or benevolent.
Benevolent. Now, from a military perspective, and I just want to caveat, I don't agree with this, but I can respect the understanding. You, sir, are a general, and I say to you, and I say, we cannot prove that they're not here to do something bad. But what we do know is that they can interfere. They're very interested in our military capabilities, and they have interfered with our nuclear capabilities, right? Mm-hmm. From a military perspective, that looks an awful lot like something we call IPB, initial preparations of the battle space, or perhaps even ISR, intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance. Whenever we're going to go into a foreign country and invade, we do long-range surveillance. We want to know how the enemy operates, how they react. So even if there's a 2% chance, 5% chance that these things are here to do something malevolent, right, then we probably should not tip our hands to the fact that we are aware of it publicly, because what happens the moment that the bad guys in a foreign country find our surveillance team over the border? We've got 12 hours. We got to invade, because the element of surprise is now over. So some may feel in the government the mere fact of acknowledging this, if there is some sort of malintent, may push up artificially a clock that exists somewhere for these things to say, okay, the foolish humans are now, the cat's out of the bag. They know we're here. We need to go in now for whatever reason they may have. So that is the military mindset potentially of some of these individuals who want to keep this secret.
So they're worried about an actual invasion.
Well, but they have to be. That is is the role of our national security apparatus, right? Even if there's a 1% chance, they have to consider that in their planning and in their decision-making matrix. So again, going back to what I said, I respect that. I don't agree with it, but I can respect that. If that is the reason why, then I would say, okay, look, in your heart, you really do have the best interests of the American people. You are a patriot. I can accept that. Again, I don't think it's your decision to make. I think it needs to go to Congress. I think it needs to go to the president. Let the American people decide. I think America can handle the truth. I think America deserves the truth, and let the American people decide if it's in their best interest to know more about this.
I agree with you, but
yeah. I think what Joe was going to say, he agrees, but he also sees why it's a problem.
Right.
And that's true. I mean, we don't know how people react. Good thing is that, well, I don't know if it's a good thing, but, we can section off the government from the people. So, like, even if the people are having a hard time with it, the government can still operate.
Yeah.
And do what it needs to do.
It's an interesting point. Yeah. That, of course, from the military standpoint, the military mind, like, you have to consider the aspect that this is a threat.
Yeah.
What was that term he used? The advanced battlefield.
Oh, advanced battlefield preparation.
Yeah.
So he thinks it looks a lot like what we would do, where we would put AC-130s in the air over and helicopters and, maybe shoot near a building and see how the enemy handles that situation, or what do they retreat? Do they move forward? Do they move here? Do they have some kind of bunker we need to look out for? Some kind of cave system, like whatever.
You're getting a feel for their protocols, for like their chain of command. You're getting a feel for like what is their response time, like and sort of in a similar way, like this could be seen like if you fly above a nuclear installation and all of a sudden all the freaking nukes go offline, like how do we respond to that? Like, who gets called up on the phone? Like, I
think the point he made, the point he was making for the fact that they may be malevolent was such that, he was making it like a case for, like, if we knew that the enemy knew that we were there and that we were coming or whatever, we would just push in and go. But like all these experiences with aliens, like, or with UFOs and UAPs, whatever they may end up being, they know we know they're there. It's not that. It's more of, and they have, if they are in fact what people have described them as, they have the capabilities of basically removing themselves from our memory and maybe there are select people who retain those memories, but like if they've been doing this for generations, they know we know they're there. It's more of like if the government, it's just when the government releases it to the people as a fact, as this is a factual thing happening right now. Yeah. They are this, and this out in our, and they're coming here, and they maybe live here. Maybe we know enough to, maybe they're terrestrial beings and they're just advanced and they've lived underwater and they're, probing us because they don't know what it would look like to interact with each other yet. And I don't know. There's so many possibilities.
Like, if there is that mindset that, like, maybe they're doing advanced battlefield preparation, and if we disclose, if they find out we know, then they have to, like, enact their game plan. Like,
I think
they obviously already know that we know.
Right. That's what I mean. That's what I was saying. It's like, they know. They obviously know we know. It's just whether
maybe that escalates the level of threat towards them, though, because as we're talking about, like, as we've been talking about, like, if as soon as we allow the entire world's brain trust in on the idea that this shit is real, as soon as, like, all these freaking skeptical ass scientists who's been poo-pooing this topic, now their brains are actually going into, like, developing our response to it.
Right.
Like, all of a sudden we can make a lot more strides towards understanding their technology.
And if we do actually have craft and we have been keeping it behind the scenes, and we've only been letting certain people at certain times look at it and try to figure it out. And if they can't do it, we'll just shelve it for another 10 years and then bring it out again when science advances more. Like, now imagine all of science, everybody who has a weird idea or a weird thought gets involved, and once it's disclosed fully and the government just releases all this information and open sources all of these patents and this and that, right? It just opens the floodgate for science to advance so rapidly.
Right. Like, imagine if when the airplane was developed, if it was kept top secret, like if it was developed inside of a government lab, and because it was such a battlefield advantage, theoretically, like it was kept secret, right? And you only had, like, a handful of the best minds brought in to keep developing it. Like, how much slower would aviation history
We probably
have
still
advanced?
have wooden planes.
I mean, I'm sure it would be pretty advanced, but, like, it definitely wouldn't be what it is today.
No.
Like, I watch YouTube videos. There's this one guy I like to watch who's just, like, this freaking engineer, and, like, he builds a bunch of personal aircraft. Like, that's just what he does,
He builds, like, full airplanes, like, from scratch.
that he'll fly in.
Oh, wow.
It's crazy.
That's pretty cool.
And, like, you can't have people like that if the entire thing is kept secret. And the people like that will ultimately end up working in that field, right? Like, so, like, you have to... It's only by having something open and available and known to the masses that it can inspire children to want to grow up and do that for their life,
Yeah, for their entire life.
Right.
Dedicate all of their intellectual efforts towards it.
And so from that standpoint, maybe if everyone knew, it would present a sort of risk to them. So,
sure. But at that point, you could just come down and be like, hey, listen, we're way more advanced than you. Just... Hey, chill.
Put down the gun.
Listen, we've been here for a while. We're not gonna hurt you.
In fact, we were here before you guys.
Right. In fact, you are just our little seedlings, and we're just watching you guys grow.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, you would expect that would be, if they are neutral, say, right, which is probably more likely if they are interdimensional.
Yeah, I go back to like
intergalactic, or like you got to assume that if you're traveling that great a distance and you're putting that much effort, like you don't necessarily go around just wanting to colonize everything. You probably have enough technology and enough advancement that you're like,
yeah,
let's watch. Let's watch it as a movie, and as soon as they get a little bit too crazy, let's be like, hey, whoa.
Yeah, they have as part of the discussion,
like mind wipe
Yeah, they have as part of the discussion, and Lou points this out that like, like our zoos, even our zoos, like where they'll have like pandas and stuff. They so want to not disturb them that like anytime a human goes in there, they'll like put on a panda suit and like try and blend in, like try as hard as we can to like not alarm them of our presence and manipulation of them and whatnot. And maybe that's what these men in black are. Maybe that's what these like tall Nordic types are, is they're just like wearing human suits.
Trying to assimilate in. Yeah, I mean, once you accept one form of alien, you got to assume there's more. Once you allow for one type, there's going to be all sorts of types. It's going to be a full-on Star Wars situation in a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away.
All right, cool. Let's take our next break here, and we'll be back with more. This is one of our beats that I don't need to introduce.
See you in a bit.
We'll be back. Of using the music not from our friends is I don't feel bad talking over it.
Oh yeah, true.
I don't want to introduce ourselves like while their music's going.
While they're doing a sick outro.
I know, yeah. Especially like that last one, Stevie, like that whole thing. Like he's really good at doing those like just drop outros, you know? It's just you gotta hear it through the end.
The end really like, I don't know.
That's the punctuation mark on it all, you know? Cool. All right. So shall we hop back into it?
All right. Let's go.
Here we go.
These underwater crafts, like this enormous one that apparently was near this oil rig, how many of them have been...
so real quick, he's talking about... This is a part I'm not going to include, but... He was talking about, Lou had talked about this particular instance where there was this oil rig, and you know how like he's talking about how gigantic an oil rig is.
Yeah, it's massive.
It's just huge. It's like multiple city blocks put together. And he said that there was one where they had like some sort of military footage, like a drone or something, that was able to see like one of these submerged objects like going in and out of the water near the oil rig, and it was like bigger than the oil rig itself.
This is a classified video that he's talking about.
Yeah. Because Joe was talking about like what are some of the like.
He's been asking this whole time. Give me some videos. I want to see something.
Well, he was asking him to like describe them like in ways that he can, right?
Right.
And so he's like using generalities, but he talked about that. So that's what he's talking about here.
Okay.
Has there been more than one of those videos?
So let me tell you what I can say from open source.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. And then I'll tell you about a conversation I had without attribution because I don't want to get in trouble. Mm-hmm. Not everybody. A lot of people are familiar with the Air Force's program called the Fastwalker program, which is a program that was started by the Air Force, among other things, was to detect UFOs. That's a fact. That was part of their mission.
Okay.
To detect a lot of things, adversarial technology, but UFOs was one of them. It's called the Fastwalker program. There was some information that was released publicly about a similar program the Navy has. I can't talk about it because I don't have approval to talk about it. But obviously they're interested because they have equities underwater. They're interested in if there's anything underwater that can perform beyond anything we have. And I remember speaking to one individual who pulled me aside very privately, and he said, Lou, we were tracking this thing doing, and I won't say the exact speed, but hundreds and hundreds of knots underwater, and it was bigger than our own submarine. Right now, you know how big our submarines are, right? They're huge. Yeah. And I asked him naively, I just kind of came out, well, what do you do when you encounter that? And he just said, very honestly, he said, we go around. Just like that, we go around.
Have there been interactions with these things?
I would not at liberty to discuss any details about that. Right. That's not for me to discuss.
But you and I got to get drunk.
I'm a lightweight,
I got to get you drunk. Let's go have some whiskey. Find out what the fuck is up. So this thing is bigger than the sub, and they followed it for hundreds of miles.
Let me give you another a great event that occurred, and I'll talk about this because it's not classified. Okay. The portions that might be, I don't know about, so I should be fine. There's an individual who I'm aware of who was a helo pilot, a helicopter pilot back in the late 90s in the Caribbean, and they were doing missile recovery. So what happened is that the Navy would test fire missiles, and then they kind of run out of fuel, they hit the water, and they sink. And at a predetermined time, they pop to the surface, we grab it with a helicopter, bring it back to shore, and we test it for telemetry and make sure that this cruise missile was doing what it was supposed to do. So they're out there in the helicopter, frogmen hanging down the line. You got the helo pilot, you got the crew chief, and the co-pilot looking all down at the bubble. And as they're about to grab this cruise missile out of the ocean, something huge and round, and what was described to me as black as a devil, starts to rise to the surface. The water begins to churn, very much like David Fravor's description of the Tic Tac incident and the roiling water. The frogman is so freaked out, he's literally trying to climb the line back up. He's like total Panic at the Disco, right? And the helicopter's like, do we do like an emergency ascent? What the hell's going on here? And right as this thing is about, and by the way, it's the size of a small island and round. Right as this thing is about to break the surface, it sucks the missile down and disappears.
Jesus
and that Christ. And Dave Fravor could probably tell you that story a little better than I can. But when you compare that to other things, you got to say,
imagine being that guy.
Yeah, that sounds a lot like what David Fravor had said, that it looked like the Tic Tac was docked with something just under the surface, and then there were white caps breaking on it, just like it would on a beach or an island or whatever, in the ocean.
Dude, that's a crazy one. Can you imagine being that guy?
Dude, hanging from a rope from a helicopter, and then you see this happening where the missile you're going to recover is just sucked down into the ocean by something massive.
Yeah.
That starts to and it sounds like water displacement, right? Mm-hmm. Like if a massive object starts to surface, there's a displacement of water. So what it does is creates a suction effect, and it starts to bubble the water around it.
Yeah. All right, so this last one is not so much. It's not so much them. This is just a point he's making. He's telling a story about his dad.
Okay.
And a point he made, and it's not so much about UFOs in particular, but I really liked what he had to say here.
Okay.
And so I'd like you to hear it as well. Check this out.
Losing weight, and I could see he wasn't eating as much, and there were telltale signs, and he didn't want to tell me. And I asked my father almost flippantly, I said, Dad, I think we were probably somewhere by St. Louis, and I said, Dad, what is the greatest threat to humanity, to humans? What is the greatest threat? Now, I say flippantly because I'm thinking, terrorism, right, and this and that. My father thought for a second. He looks at me and says, son, it's corruption. And I said, what do you mean corruption? Like financial corruption? Governmental corruption? He says, no. Corruption at its heart is when you are willing to bypass your own moral code, your own ethics for something else. And whether it's financial corruption, religious corruption, governmental corruption, or even moral corruption, when you start to compromise on your own values, it's a very quick downward spiral to utter chaos. And he knew that firsthand because my father was in the Bay of Pigs invasion. He was a political prisoner of Castro. He actually fought with Castro against Batista. And then when Castro went communist, my father joined the folks here and the friendly folks at the CIA and was part of the invasion of the Bay of Pigs. He spent 2 years in Castro's prisons being tortured. So when he came to this country offered us opportunities that no other country could or would. And the reason why Cuba failed was because of corruption. And he said, look, corruption will be the end of all. And if it's a very quick downward spiral with democracy, that if democracy becomes corrupt, you now have tyranny, right? And so every time someone in the government is willing to compromise a little bit on the value of what it means to serve the American people, and they forget that, they become corrupt. And that actually erodes the very essence of what democracy is and what this country is about. And that is why it is so important that the individuals in our government that don't want to have this conversation and don't want to talk to Congress and are making the unilateral decision on your behalf and the American taxpayer in my behalf, that's wrong. They don't have the right to do that. There is a process of rules and laws we have in this country that we've all agreed to we're going to abide by. And that includes them. And they don't have the right to bypass that. Even if they think they're doing it for the right reason, I disagree with that. I think this democracy only works because we all agree it works, right? And the moment you begin to compromise on that, all of democracy is at risk. And I mean that sincerely. It's not a slow downward spiral. It's quick, and you can hit rock bottom very, very quickly. And the only reason why this government works is because we all have faith and a commitment to what we consider are the American values and serving the American people and, for the people, by the people. So I think it's very dangerous when elements in the government, and I don't want to villainize the whole government because the government's full of great people. They do great things. They keep us safe. So I'm talking about the minority few. Some of these people who have actually gone after me will probably continue to come after me to try to discredit me and everything else, despite the volumes of documentation that I have in my possession and others, because they don't want to have the conversation. And they are happy with the status quo. And to me, that is a greater threat than any UAP could ever have on humanity. It's the greatest threat is how we perceive ourselves and what we are willing to do to keep this a secret in violation of the commitment and what we have done we've sworn in some cases to uphold the values of this country. And I think that's a concern for me. And that's why I don't want certain elements having this conversation of what this means, the bigger macro level conversation, because I don't think they're qualified. I'm not qualified. I know that. I'm damn sure they're not qualified either. So this is why I think this type of national level conversation is so important. At the end of the day, it's not up to me. People say, Lou, what do you think? What the hell what I think? Doesn't matter what I think. What matters is what you think. Here's the information. Here's the data. You figure it out. Don't ask me for what this means, because I'm not entitled to that. I didn't earn that privilege, and I would definitely never take it away, because that is sacred. That's you. That's up to you to decide for yourself. And this is part of my frustration with this overall conversation, because there are elements that don't want you to have this conversation.
Well said.
Yeah.
Dude, preach, brother.
No kidding. Also scary.
Yeah.
Scary, the idea of it's a realization that me and you have talked about, and it's a realization that things can go bad quickly, and it's like he's saying, keeping the minority a minority and not allowing them to grab all this power that they're so desperate to have.
Yeah, I mean, of course, as a libertarian, I think there's a lot more of the government who has fallen to corruption than he thinks has fallen to corruption.
Well, and like he's saying, all it has to start with was a moral corruption. Is allowing yourself to bend on your morality, or and then everything else is your principles, and your and your morals.
There's different forms of corruption, right? Like you could be corrupt in a particular domain, right? But like as soon as you give into it in whatever domain you do give into it, it starts to spiral out of control.
Yeah,
and
because then they have those hooks in you at that point.
In the UFO topic that we're focusing on today, like obviously that's a huge thing, and obviously, I want to give benefit of the doubt to some elements of the government who may have been truly believing that they were doing what was best for the country in the time that they were in, right?
Right. But things change. People change. We've watched enough UFO movies now.
When the Cold War ends, and what you saw as a legitimate excuse for keeping this classified, when that excuse goes away, and instead of saying, oh, well, there goes the reason we were keeping it classified, now it's time to come out with it. When you say no, like that's that corruption he's talking about. Yep. You know, like that's that compromising your principle.
Yep, you compromise your principle to take the opportunity to grab the power,
or to avert an uncomfortable position.
Yeah, but at the heart of it, it's power. It's power driven. You can't think of it as altruistic.
No. Like, not saying it's altruistic. What I'm saying is, so for some people, maybe it's because they're seeking power, but from other elements, like maybe it's because they're scared of how the public might react.
Yes.
How they might be held accountable.
Sure.
Like, so it's not necessarily.
Yeah, I get that. They're covering their own
power.
asses.
It could be covering your ass. Like, but that's a form of corruption too.
Well, and at the same time, it's just a cowardice thing, and it's something that the fact that the loopholes and the channels in which that is able to happen at this level, at this time period in history, where we have all this the ability to like discover all of this information now, right? Like we have all these unclassified documents on the internet now, where we can just go and look them up, or go to our local, federal building and look for it, get, put in for a FOIA request or whatever for it. Like, it's not going to stay secret for long, and now they're reeling, and, maybe it is a slow, disclosure process, but I just think it needs to be quicker than what we're getting now. I think it needs to be every few weeks we should be seeing something where some government official is coming out now and talking about it, and Congress is taking it more seriously. We actually have a actual congressional hearing where we can, there was the
Schumer amendment to the NDAA, which some stuff was taken out of, but actually one of the clips I have for the Jessie Michaels is covering that. Okay. But I just gotta say, like, that little speech that Lue gave right there, like, I gained huge respect for him for that.
I didn't like him. before. Not that I didn't like him personally. It's more like I just thought he was more of an agent for them beforehand.
Yeah.
Like with all the interviews he did before this one.
Yeah, I've
from
heard
what I've seen,
a
from
lot
what
of
you
his
showed me
interviews
tonight.
where he was less relaxed, less able to just like talk and bullshit and philosophize. And I heard more of them where it was a lot more like pointed, direct questions of like, what do you know? And when you hear him doing the like dancing around, answering stuff, like when you hear that over and over and over, like there's like this reflexive instinct in me to like being like, what are you covering up here, man?
Yeah. As soon as he says, I'm going to be careful with what I say here, it's like,
yeah. I mean,
it's like I hear that in his early interviews. That's what I was hearing all the time. I'm going to be careful what I say here, and I'm going to make sure not to say too much. And it's like, dude.
Right.
What are you here for then?
Right.
Like, yes, you have some information and you have some, validity behind what you're saying. But come on, give us what you got.
He's clearly...
He definitely was more relaxed in this interview, I could tell.
More relaxed. He seemed more at ease with knowing the limits of what he could and couldn't say. He did a better job of feeling less obfuscatory. Is that a word?
Probably not, but we'll work with it. Obfuscated. He was obfuscating.
He felt like when he was going into areas where he couldn't talk about, like he felt like he was still and answering the question in as much as he could without details.
Yeah.
Right? Like he just seems to have mastered the art of what he's allowed to and not allowed to talk about a lot more.
When he's able to work within the interview questions, right? So like Joe hits him with a question, he's able to be like, that's a great question, and this is what I'm going to tell you.
You're
without like making it sound too robotic and too like pre-planned.
Right. And it's not like a politician-y like redirect and go 90 degrees the opposite way.
And
it's like,
don't give us any answer.
He's like, I'm going to answer your question in the best way I can, Anyway, I just gained a ton of respect for him after this interview, and like after that speech, especially, like I have a lot more faith that regardless of whether he or not his loyalties are still, like whether or not he will ultimately end up being part of some misinformation campaign in the future, right? Like worst case scenario, some false flag UFO thing, right? Mm-hmm. He does seem at the very least like he is on the side of like, let's open up this stuff.
Yeah, whether what he has opened up about is used against him and everybody else.
Yeah.
Knowingly or unknowingly.
Yeah. I have more faith in him now.
Sure.
That doesn't mean I'm going to try and never be the type of person who just like all in on anything anyone says. Mm-hmm. But, he got a huge upgrade in this for me. So I recommend you check out the entire interview. It's over 2 hours. So it's long. I can't just play the whole podcast, but it's super worth your time. Check it out. It's great.
So do you want to cover that Jessie Michaels thing? Not cover the whole thing, but like...
No. I've got a couple... I've only got a few things picked out of it so far.
Okay. Let's go over that real quick. And then for the last segment...
Before that, I've got a special treat for you.
Okay. What do you got?
I came across this super randomly. So I got a YouTube recommendation for a video where someone was talking about this particular like set of videos I'm about to show you, and they're analyzing whether or not they thought it was real or not.
Okay.
I didn't even get through that whole video, but I got into it enough to where I found out like the channel of the videos he was talking about, and I watched them for myself, and I find them fascinating. I have no answers on whether these are real or not, but goddamn if they aren't amazing to watch and ponder and think for yourself on whether or not you think this is some sort of fakery or not. But whoo, gets my imagination going.
I've seen that one, I know.
Yeah, so this is a channel on YouTube that has not been active in 13 years.
Oh, wow.
This person came on, posted these 4 videos, and disappeared.
He has 24.1 thousand subscribers. He's only got these 4 videos.
Yeah, it's
Each
crazy
video
how
has-
much these videos have not blown up. One of them has a million views.
And then 2 of them have 500,000, and then one of them has 250,000.
So the channel on YouTube is Ivan0135, and I'll leave a link to it. But I'm just going to go through these in order because they're all short. So this video is called Disclosure Leaked UFO Alien Case Video Confidential Documents Old Footage.
All right.
That's it. So there's different elements to this one. So this piece here, you see what appears to be a UFO flying above some maybe farmhouse or something.
Yeah. That's what it looks like. It also does look like it could be a Zeppelin with lighting from the back.
Sure.
But still looks awfully like
This section here appears to be like an actual
alien.
gray, sort of conventional gray alien.
And it looks like it's standing up.
Yeah, it's
And
standing.
then it cuts to another video of a
What
crash.
appears to be, a crashed saucer, because the video then pans down. This is the part that makes me skeptical of this one, because this looks a little weird to me.
Yeah.
But I imagine if an alien was dead, like, it would look double weird, because an alien would already look weird.
True.
But it looks like to be like an alien passed out on the ground. And then it's got this section here, which seems to be
close-up footage of it.
Yeah, close-up footage of an alien.
And then it looks like it's moving at that point.
Yeah.
The
So that's
that
video
was
number
on the
1.
ground. Okay.
Here's video number 2, called Alien Gray Extraterrestrial Zeta Reticuli UFO Leaked Footage. So I'll read this here. Filtrate for declassification and dissemination through the internet and media. 7 videotapes with material recorded between 1942 and 1969. Material containing UFO incidents, recovery, and study of extraterrestrial life forms. Due to the importance of these documents, maintain the anonymity. Maintain the anonymity of the sources. The video contains edited fragments of videotape 5. Tape duration 180 minutes. Total recorded duration 1.260 minutes. And then it cuts to a listing of timestamps. And we're seeing what appears to be like an alien. It's blinking, though. And
Sort of.
It definitely seems to be blinking. We got a very conventional, it seems to be wearing a jumpsuit. It's got these elongated fingers. It's looking around like...
Massive head, big eyes.
Yeah, so like I was like looking around on like Reddit and stuff, and obviously it's Reddit, so you can't take anything too seriously, but like people claiming to be people who do animatronics or people who do like video effects saying like this is incredibly convincing footage, like the detail, the movements, the micro movements.
Yeah.
Like this is actually
as good as what we have now.
Yeah.
And this
This
pretty
was released
obviously
13
old.
years ago. Okay, so then, but on looking online for this, one thing I stumbled onto was someone noticing that the timestamp at the bottom is counting too slow. And so if you actually speed up the footage, the motion looks a lot more natural. So,
it was slowed down before it was input.
Yeah, so let me play it back for you at 1.5 speed here and like check out the motion now. Looks like much more natural, sort of like blinking.
Yeah,
The
because
head
of how
movement
big their
looks
eyes
a
are,
little
though.
less natural.
Because of how big their eyes are, it doesn't look like that's like a full blank.
Yeah.
And remember that document we talked about? It was Dr. Silver in that book he talked about where we have this vestigial filament on our eyes that in other animals they use it to clean the lenses.
Yeah, yeah.
Like where we have to close our eyes or wear goggles or something to protect our
But
eyes.
for other animals, they don't need the entire eyelid to close because that thing goes down and wipes the eye. Right.
That's what that kind of looked like. It was like a muscle spasm for sure, but it wasn't like a full blink like we would do.
Yeah, yeah. It's like an eyelid. It's like there's a double layer eyelid maybe and like the outer eyelid's coming down but not fully closing.
Because the inside lid is going on the inside.
But the blink
lens
speed seems a lot more natural once you have it sped up here.
Yeah, I agree. I agree.
This one, this is just the person like responding to people's comments in response to the post about the documents. The material is an edited compilation of the documents that we have. Your opinion and the conclusion you draw from this material do not depend on us. Maybe you are looking in the wrong directions. You are not the ones who reject this material, or you are the ones who reject this material.
That's all it was. Oh.
Sources will not be revealed. Information that may involve any agency or people will not be disclosed. There is not any reference which may link the material to any organization that is working today in the material exposed. However, you are speculating and making conjectures about its origins. It's like a video response to internet haters. The material does not belong to any film, video game, television series, or any other commercial products that have been revealed to date or which are currently in production. No one who is out of this may prove to be the owner of this material. No one who is out of this can prove he has in his possession the original material. The revelation of further material will depend on the events and people.
Okay.
And then this one actually, I think, has some more
Family
stuff.
Vacation.
Tape 6, Family Vacation. From the first contact in 1942, a series of diplomatic visits to discuss matters of mutual concern were planned. Under the Treaty 23/04, these meetings would take place in secrecy. A limited number of special agents would escort visitors, and they would only meet high-ranking officers.
That checks out.
Right. According to the document 072/E, at the meeting of 1961, there was an incident involving 3 subjects due to the violation of the agreement by the officers at the military base when they discovered that their arrival has been filmed with a hidden device without their consent. Under the Treaty 23/04, the meetings would be confidential and filming or taking photographs would not be allowed. And then I think this is the bit that, this shows what is apparently that's
That part of that meeting.
yeah.
Like the aliens all coming in.
After the incident, the treaty was revised. So yeah, you just get that little clip of what looks like a couple of them. Yeah, like a little group of them moving around, walking.
And they had look exactly like the ones from before. So.
So what do you think?
It's very interesting.
It's super interesting.
I've seen some of these videos before on other people's stuff. Like people probably grab these many times now
and like edit
just like we're doing
stuff, right?
Yeah. I mean, some of these videos are pretty convincing. It's just I would love to have originals and somebody be able to verify that these aren't edited and, faked. I mean, if it was animatronics, it's got to be some real advanced stuff.
There's some pretty advanced motion for animatronics, I would think. Because even like the best of Hollywood animatronics
has limits.
It looks robotic in a lot of its movement.
Our stuff now, if you were to film it with a 30 millimeter camera, using old technology to film it, it would look a lot like that.
Right. Like if you're looking at like modern day AI robotics.
Right.
And like if you use that as the baseline for your animatronics, you could get this sort of naturalistic motion. But that technology didn't exist
10 years ago.
13
years ago, or
when these were released. But
2010 is what I meant.
Obviously this is claimed to be older, but like this video at least came out 13 years ago.
Yeah. So at the latest date this would have been able to have been done, it would have been 2010, 2011.
Yeah, so I don't think we had advanced AI animatronics yet at that point. So,
and if we did, it would have been governmental, and it could have, leaked out. It's possible that they would have staged something like this in the event that they may have needed it. That is
it
possible,
could be CGI, but this looks too. It's hard to say because, like, if you do CGI and then you throw that CGI through a processing chain that makes it look like 1960s video,
or what you do
to degrade it, like that CGI could be a lot more convincing.
What if you use like a advanced hologram on a projection screen and you filmed that on like one of these new like Disney sets where they have these three-dimensional, not three-dimensional, but like panoramic screens, and then I'm just talking hypothetically with like max all of the technology we have.
The problem with a hologram is
filming it with a 30 millimeter camera or whatever.
That's great, but the problem with that is a hologram still at the root of that, the hologram would be playing back a 3D animation. So it still is CGI.
Sure.
It's just CGI projected into real space and then filmed through a camera, right?
Right.
So
but that's what I mean as far as like getting it to look like this.
Yeah. So sure. How long
Using
ago
CGI
was it that we did that? There was the Tupac concert.
Oh yeah,
with the hologram. Yeah. I mean that
was like probably 10 years ago, actually.
Yeah, but it was pretty rudimentary hologram tech.
Well, yeah,
it was being projected on a painted glass. It wasn't just like, it wasn't true like 3D hologram
in natural space. Like,
right.
You got to imagine like when that technology really takes off, it would be like, imagine like you getting a FaceTime from your mom and dad, our mom and dad, and you have like sensors or cameras or projections throughout your house, so they can walk through your house as if they're there, and they're using all of the technology of your house integrated into the system. So that 3D call, they're just sitting there in your living room watching your kids play, and they don't have to be there. That would be sick. Imagine that.
Yeah. Cool. Do you want to take a quick break real quick and then I'll show a couple clips, or should we just write it out?
You got a couple more clips of the next talk?
Yeah, I've got a couple interesting clips from this next talk.
Let's do these clips, and then if we end a little early, let's end a little early, and we'll save some of the stuff I've got, and because we're gonna need a couple episodes planned and ready to go.
Okay.
coming out.
Or do we look? How about this? Because I've only got a couple clips from this talk. Let's cover your crop circle stuff now, and then we'll end it there. And
I feel
then
like
I'll
this might take a while. Like it might take longer than I initially thought, just
okay.
because there's a
Okay.
lot of cool images I want to show you. And
Yeah,
then
yeah,
there's
yeah.
Like a kind of like a story I want to like play out a bit.
all right.
So I think it might be best to start an episode with it and maybe finish with like a secret history or something. So
Cool.
Let's finish
Cool.
with your stuff, and then we'll save mine for the next episode.
All right, so this is from Jessie Michaels' YouTube channel, which if you haven't checked him out, what the heck are you doing? His stuff is great.
Yeah.
This is a 3-hour documentary he released last night as of the time we're recording this. And he is interviewing Daniel Peter Sheehan, who he claims to... the title of this video is called The Man Involved in Every American Conspiracy, which is a great title. So this guy is a lawyer, and he has essentially represented a bunch of the UFO whistleblowers like Lue Elizondo. He did represent Lue? Yeah.
Oh, okay.
He also represented David Mack.
Harry Mack?
John Mack.
John Mack.
The Harvard psychologist.
And the newer guys too, like
I don't know for sure Grush, but I know he represented Elizondo. But he's also represented. He's been involved like in legal cases involving the JFK assassination. He's been involved in. So let me just read you a little bit of a smattering from the chapters here. JFK and UFOs, JFK assassination, MK Ultra, UFOs and consciousness, Watergate. Epistemology and truth.
I thought he was going to say Silk Road.
John Mack. Anyway, he's got some really interesting stuff here. So I've clipped a couple interesting bits that I think would be.
But you were saying you wanted to do a little bit more in depth once you get through this, huh? Because you've only gotten through a part.
I've
of it.
only listened to a half hour of this so far.
Okay.
So,
these
I'm
clips
gonna keep clipping as I watch the rest of it, and like we could probably make our next
bring it into our
episode
next
like
episode, too.
crop circles and the rest of this.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Okay.
so maybe we'll do that. It's gonna be another UFO streak.
Hell yeah.
Cool. So let's check this out.
Okay.
But that's the impression that, again, people
Well, it got
have.
diluted. It got passed, but in a very...
Well, what happened?
Oh, and so in this part, what they're doing is they're talking about the legislation that just got passed.
Okay.
The Chuck Schumer amendment to the NDAA.
Okay.
happened is that one of the most important aspects of the bill did get passed, and that is ordering, here's the Congress of the United States, both the Senate and House, signed by the President, ordering all 6 of the United States military services, the Army, Air Force, Navy, the Space Force, all of them, and all 18 of the United States intelligence agencies. There's a lot more than just the CIA and the Defense Intelligence Agency and the NSA. There's 18 of them, right? And then there's 32 United States Defense Department agencies. All of them were ordered by Congress and the President to take 300 days to gather together every single piece of information that they had about the UFO phenomenon and about any non-human intelligence that was understood to be responsible for the UFO phenomenon, and gather it all together, put it into digital format with an index so that it's recoverable and searchable, and have it ready by October 20th. Of 2024 to be turned over, the Senate bill said immediately, to the National Archives. That got changed in the House, but only in a minor way, in which they said they were to turn it over as soon as possible after having it compiled. But that whole process was extraordinarily important, and it was a key portion of the bill that the Senate passed, and that got passed by Congress. That is the law right now. So that whole process is going on right now. Okay. So the bottom line is that piece got passed. The big thing in the Senate bill that did not get passed was the creation of an independent panel There was a board of review that the Senate had proposed that be an independent board of review that got to look through all of this information and decide how much of it is going to be made public. Okay? And they put in a provision that the President of the United States could personally postpone the public revelation of any piece of information that the board chose to make public. But that was a big piece that was cut out. The House didn't agree to allow an independent panel to review all of this information and decide how much is going to be made public. So that the information has to be gathered together and made available in the National Archives, but then it doesn't necessarily have to go anywhere. That's where we are right now. But the Senate Intelligence Committee people and the House Intelligence Committee people will get to see it. And that's a key thing, to get the Congress briefed in on what it is that the executive branch has been doing all of these years, since the last 80 years, basically. It goes back to basically January 1st of 1945. Is the actual operative date in the statute. Every piece of information, every phone call, every memo, every internal study, every report of a UFO sighting, every single piece of information that they have has to be put into this compendium.
So that's happening.
That's happening right now.
That's amazing. And will that be public, or that was going to be
That's the question. As of right now, the operative order of the Senate was that it had to be turned over immediately on October 20th to the National Archives and be made available to the members of the Intelligence Committee. Okay? The House has changed that language to be made available as soon as possible, which is a wiggle phrase. The question is, how quickly are they going to turn it over? But they have to have it compiled by October 20th. So that's the law right now. And a lot of people, even in the UFO community, just think, the law got gutted, it got made.
No, that's fascinating.
But this is extraordinarily
That's really important. But another very...
Yeah, so
I mean, it did kind of get gutted in the sense of
it did. They're going to go over that part. They're going to go, well, yeah, so there's that loophole, but they're going to go over the real part that got gutted.
Okay.
But I didn't realize this either, that this is actually what passed. Like,
That's
at the very least, the Congress is going to be, the intelligence committees of the houses are going to be informed on UFO history.
Right. The House and the Senate Intelligence Committees are going to be briefed, and then they get to decide what gets passed down to the rest of Congress.
Right.
And then Congress
and
gets
to the
to
president
decide.
And
then
whether
Congress
or not
gets to, and the president gets to decide, gets the final word on what they say. The Intelligence Committee says on what goes public. And then the Congressional Committee gets to decide what becomes public after that.
Right.
So, there's a lot of ways to just lose a bunch of information.
Of course. But the idea that all of this information is going to be assembled and put into the archives
means that there's going to be somewhere to pull from it.
Right.
So,
and at some point in the future, even if they say, no, we're keeping this under wraps, at some point in the future,
we know where it's at.
That can be FOIA'd. Yeah. That can be, opened up.
Disclosed. And you get a president.
I mean, to put it all in a central archive, organized, indexed,
as long
searchable,
as it actually happens.
Right.
Because who's going to know that actually happened, right?
For sure. The Senate Intelligence Committee and the House Intelligence Committee will know if it actually happens.
The president's supposed to know as well, but
yeah. But all right, so check out the other part of this.
The important part of the law is the idea that government is going to declare eminent domain over UFOs, the actual crafts that these aerospace companies have in their possession.
Well, they have the right to do it if they choose to.
Yeah, but that
it isn't automatic.
But that got gutted. That is no longer part of the bill. And my understanding of the behind the scenes, what might have happened is Mike Turner, who is on the
he's the chair of this House Intelligence Committee.
Chair of the House Intelligence Committee, but also represents Dayton, Ohio, which is where Wright-Patterson Air Force Base is.
That is right.
All the UFO rumors are centered around Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, of them holding kind of craft. And his top 3 donors are, I think, Lockheed. You know, I don't want to mess up the other 2, but 2 other big aerospace companies.
Yeah.
And you know, he works through Mike Johnson to kind of take that out of Schumer.
Right. That's right.
And so I find that interesting. Where do you think a company like Lockheed Martin actually see, like, how do you think they see the UFO thing? Because
they see it as a profit-making potential profit. There's no doubt about how they see it.
Well, Ben Rich, who's the president of Skunk Works, their most secretive division, used to call UFOs unfunded opportunities.
Yeah.
And then in 2016, 2017, you know, they're working with Tom DeLonge, who's the Blink-182 frontman, and you have Rob Weiss, who is, you know, Ben Rich's successor at Skunk Works, and emails between him and Tom DeLonge that were revealed through WikiLeaks, where it's clear that Lockheed wants to, like, talk more about the UFO, you know, phenomena, but then they work through a guy like Mike Turner later, you know, last year, to kill this bill. So that feels a little schizophrenic. They sort of want to do it on their own terms, or how do they?
They want to get Congress to know enough about it, which they don't yet, to agree to set up a law that authorizes them to get patent rights. That's what they want. They want to get patent rights to the technology, so that the United States government, for the next 1,000 years, when it wants to have access to any of the technology of the UFOs for superluminal flight or anti-gravity stuff, is going to have to license it from the private company and pay them a ton of money for it. I mean, it's just absolutely, you know, it's just avarice and greed, you know.
Got it. So that makes sense. So they want, like,
yeah, I mean, that absolutely sums up why it hasn't come out yet.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Power, money, greed.
Yeah. So imagine, okay, that the intelligence communities and the defense contractors who are studying and trying to recreate
and likely have the craft. If it has been recovered, likely they're the ones who have it, because that gives the government plausible deniability.
Right. It's
so
not subject to FOIA.
Yep. So it makes sense to work with those companies you've already contracted
they're also
with.
the people who deliver to the government all the top
information.
secret aircraft.
Exactly.
Right? So they already have top secure, like they have security clearances, they have the scientists and the know-how and the factories.
Creating the
These are the people who you want to reverse engineer aerospace technology, and the people you trust to.
Right.
And now they've had
this
decades of reverse engineering this shit.
They have a card up their sleeve so that they're playing their hand correctly, so that they can get what they want out of the deal.
In a sense, they want this topic to go public too.
It makes them more money,
because as soon as the topic goes public, they no longer have to hold back all this research they've been doing.
They can hire whoever they want and get it in.
They can start releasing products based on this technology, and if they can get patent guarantees on it, oh my God, the windfall profits.
Oh my God, yeah.
Dude, can you imagine?
I mean,
you could take a UFO.
Giga millions.
You could take a Southwest Airlines UFO flight to Greece in
2.5 seconds.
Right. For $10.
Yep. And all we can guarantee you is you'll get there and you might be a little queasy.
Right. So they want this is like changing the framing for me on like the nature of the phenomena right now, because like if they've had these things, they've been studying these things,
but the government doesn't.
Right.
Then there's a conundrum, because now the government will be forced to disclose, but they're at the mercy of these companies and at the rate in which, and they have to negotiate with the companies for these patent rights too. So if they're not getting guarantees, then there's no reason for these companies to be like, yeah, we'll
So you got the Lue Elizondo types in the government who think people have the right to know. You've got the Lockheed Martins who've been reverse engineering this stuff, who have just been waiting for the day that this stuff can go public so that they can start releasing technology that they can make money on based off this stuff.
Yeah, once they come out with their first
the government can start building fighter jets based on this stuff that they have to buy from Lockheed, right? Like,
yeah,
it's a huge money making opportunity for the contractors, and I hadn't seen that until this interview. That's crazy.
Well, and that's a very powerful element for disclosure. Take that same line of thought and move it into different realms of this paranormal phenomenon. So not just aerial or aeronautic technology, but the phenomenon otherwise, right? The psychological stuff and all of these other technologies, right? That could be potential. Like companies like GE or other big like electronics companies that are doing research on different things. Like there was this one supposed time traveler that said that GE was the company that came out with the first working time machine. So imagine the patents on that too, and these other companies trying to work on that. So if you come out with the UFO technology, everything comes out.
Yeah,
because you start to realize that the limit that you had been working in, the ceiling is much higher. Right, the ceiling of knowledge and unknowing has skyrocketed.
Yeah.
So that means that all of these other companies that might be working with the government on contracts that we have no idea about, working on research and in all sorts of forms of technology, will also be implicated in this, and that's when we might get these predictions of like other like time travelers who come from different timelines who say,
but you also have to
come out with this in 2020 and this and that. And
this all, like, it's such a complicated topic because it's also intertwined with the like what, as far as we know, like space-time is a thing, right? So if you can create a space-time bubble that lets you go superluminal, then you've also invented a time machine. So like, how do you release this technology while controlling the chaos of essentially
giving people access to everything?
Yeah.
Literally the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah. All right. So this next chunk is a deathbed confession of someone that this Daniel Sheehan knows.
Okay.
It's a really interesting story, and I think you'll dig this. Check this out.
Where are the beings?
That particular one was at S4.
In Area 51.
Outside of Area 51, about 11 miles away.
I would totally distrust that, but I have some good friends who are very trustworthy. So they're a couple, and the husband broke the world record for the biggest wave ever surfed in Nazaré, Portugal. His name's Garrett McNamara, and her name's Nicole. And they're very good people, and they would never lie.
Yeah.
And they have a friend who worked at Area 51, or might be a friend of a friend, but they met him. And he was totally traumatized, and after having worked there.
Yes.
And he said that he was led down into a basement.
That's right.
And he saw reptilian creatures, and they were speaking English.
Well, they're telepathic. They're telepathic, and they talk French to French people. They talk German to German people, but they're telepathic.
But isn't that weird? That's strange, though, right?
Strange, yes. Yeah, there's no doubt about that.
So, but then, like, if they're that advanced, they're telepathic. They can fly, faster than light. Then how the hell do we corral them into underground bases against their will, or are they happy to be kept?
Well, the one of the ones that I was talking to the guy who was there when they were interviewing one of them. It was clear that it was voluntary, that the extraterrestrial being was voluntarily talking with them, was having telepathic communications. So he was being interviewed.
They're just kind of hanging out in these bases.
Well, that I wouldn't put it that way.
What do they want? Why are they there?
What happened is Albert Stein was this guy's name. He called me on his deathbed. He was dying up in northern Minnesota. Called me and wanted me to come and see him right away because he was dying. And so I flew there and went and met him at the hospice. And he's sitting there with all the tubes in him and dying. And he said, look, he had to tell somebody about this, that he was the United States Army, was assigned as a clerk typist to Project Blue Book. And that while Blue Book had this whole buffaloing operation going on, telling people that it was swamp gas and, birds that they had misidentified, that there were over 700 actual sightings that they found it absolutely impossible to discount, that they couldn't come up with, because too many people had seen him, there were too many corroborating witnesses, there was radar tracking and everything. And he was assigned to the group that was investigating those sightings. And he would just sit, and they'd send people out to interview all the people that had seen one of these things, and then they would come back and give him their reports, and he would type them all up. And he was there for years, and got to be close friends with the guy who was the commander of that unit. And the guy came into him after a number of years. They shared certain kind of religious views. He with the commander. And the commander came in and told him that he was going to be going to Area 51 and wanted him to come with him as the clerk typist, just to kind of monitor what they were doing. So they went to Area 51. They got taken to S4, went down a number of flights down to S4, and they came to this area where there was this a big room with a two-way mirror in it. And there was an extraterrestrial being there. He was like, 5.5 feet, almost 6 feet tall, had a kind of a light blue jumpsuit on that they'd given him, and he was standing there. And this guy, Albert, wouldn't go near him. He was just traumatized by the guy. And he said he thought he was demonic and didn't want to go near him. But his commander went in and was having this telepathic communication going on with him. And so he stayed outside, and the people that were there staffing the area, they showed him, they had these card files where they had been interviewing the being voluntarily. And he was answering questions that they had. And one of the questions was, where do you come from? And he said that he was part of a group of beings that were from different star systems in our galaxy, and that they were part of a team that were going around inside the galaxy, checking on places where life had actually begun on different planets, and they were sort of monitoring what they were doing. And they asked the follow-up question. They said, well, who's in charge of that? What kind of, they didn't say it this way, but what kind of juridical entity, is there that's coordinating this kind of a thing? And he said, well, you people would refer to it as God, but it's very different from what you think. That's what he said.
Wow. Wow. That's good shit right there. And you know exactly what that makes me think of the instant? You know what I'm thinking. Yeah. OWASP, bro. Yeah, I mean, in the Secret History, it led me back to Secret History, the same kind of idea and philosophy of like, there's these gods and there's tiers to it. And God has a plan, and it, and the lesser gods are the ones who are the managerial types who do all of the bidding. They're sent out to the different life forms, and they represent God. Yeah, and and they can be corrupted, and they can do things that are outside of God's will. And, and God, in the sense of the way we believe God to be, is not this like power where it has this overarching reach to every inch of the galaxy or the universe, but it has this force. Yeah. It has this message or this intention that it spreads,
Or-
and that the lesser gods are able to break that intention and have their own intention.
Yeah.
So they're given these positions, but because of the time frames and the time scales that we might be dealing with at this point, within this idea, like we're talking about like hundreds and hundreds of thousands of years probably, or if not millions, that these things have been out there doing this, and maybe they just got bored for 100,000 years or 10,000 years.
Right,
And they're like,
right.
let's just not do what he tells us to do and see what happens.
Yeah. So I'm gonna say,
Then you
or
get us.
there's another really interesting Joe Rogan episode that I haven't finished yet, but I started the last one right before Lue Elizondo, 2193, Jack Symes. He's a philosopher. And he is sort of a panpsychist-ish.
Oh, really? Okay.
Okay.
I'll have to watch it then.
yeah.
I like that.
He sees problems with both sides of the spectrum, right? He sees huge philosophical issues with the atheist position, right? Like that theists just have a better explanation for like life. You know, like if you're an atheist, if you're a committed, quote unquote, religious atheist, you know, you believe that everything came from nothing.
Right.
You believe that an action, that a
Happened
reaction happened without an action causing it.
Right.
You believe in effect without causation.
Right.
You believe in some sort of, right? Like you don't
Big Bang with
necessarily,
no mechanism behind it.
yeah, you don't, that is not a good answer to the question of,
It's not a good starting point.
right, of
Yeah.
where does this all come from, right?
Yeah.
Like it is a huge problem.
Yeah.
And then he says on the theist side, you have another big problem, like a God who is all knowing, all loving, perfect,
All powerful.
just
yeah.
perfect, the definition of like good,
Yeah.
sets the universe into motion and sets in place Darwinian evolution, natural selection, like survival of the fittest, where generations upon
one of the most
generations,
more imperfect
trillions
things.
upon trillions upon trillions of innocent entities have had to claw and connive just to eke out a living, just to be fucking preyed upon.
Yeah.
And that's your perfect all-knowing God. This just
Right.
sets up this system of horrible suffering.
It's somewhere in between. Somewhere in
Right.
between.
And so he goes in between, and which makes me think of Owaspy, right? And so he sort of he talks about panpsychism as like the universe itself, maybe the universe, the all is conscious, but it's like it's becoming aware of itself. Like it's like, you know, like
yeah.
it's not necessarily a being outside of space and time and creation who set things into motion, but it's like it's becoming aware as we're becoming aware. Like we're
Yeah,
all part of it.
It's
type
part,
of thing.
It's almost like a toddler.
It's like a discovery process.
Yeah. It's a toddler fumbling around the universe, and it's discovering itself in its own place based on the knowledge of all of the other living things around
or it's
it.
like the holographic principle, or like the idea that maybe we like the planet Earth, the Milky Way galaxy is like a cell in the body of God, right? Like, you know, like we're
even
part of
like
it.
it's an
Like we
electron.
contribute to it.
It's-
We're
it's an
part of its
electron.
consciousness, but we're part of the whole. But it's not necessarily that like someone sat down and was like, poof, I'm creating the earth, right? So it's interesting.
Unless that God set about, right? That the God set about and created entities within its own self, right? The idea, like back in the secret history of the smaller gods, the lowercase g gods being born out of the flesh of the capital G God, right? And out of that flesh, it goes out and is supposed to do the will of, like, basically, like, whatever its purpose is, it's doing the will of God. And that I'm trying to loop it back, but its idea of it is like, it's all just, we're all part of it, but it's not this all-knowing, all-powerful, like, it's just spreading itself out and its consciousness out. And that smaller, lesser God may have the ability to create the earth intentionally. Maybe. Right? Just like the cells in our body are able to create other things intentionally before a purpose.
Or maybe the reason he says it's what you would call God, right? Like in this interview with Sheehan, maybe the reason you would put it that way is because the sort of panspermia idea of like a Chandra Vikramasinghe, where it's like these entities, like, they know their mission is to spread life and cause evolution and cause a growth of consciousness across the cosmos. And to farm and to
funnel
foster
that information back to the creator,
right?
So that the creator can experience itself.
And so, in a way, those lower G gods, that sort of galactic summit of people who are here checking in on us,
or whatever,
back when the Earth had just formed and was just starting to cool down, they fly by and sprinkle us with microbes to kickstart the evolution, right? And they allow it to follow an evolutionary process, maybe accelerated at times, in order that it evolves for our own biosphere, right? Like, they're not necessarily like setting out like, here's a panther, I'm going to set this up, and here's you know, like, they're just sprinkling
like
it with
Sims.
genetic material that has all the background history in its genetic code to be able to solve all the problems that Earth will throw at it. And because it's on our particular planet in our particular distance from the sun and our particular climatic conditions, as that life evolves and deals with the conditions that it's presented with, it forms in different ways. And so every, unique biosphere has its own selection of animals and plants and fungi, right?
Yep.
And their job is to go around and make sure these things are like growing and doing well, and like check on like where consciousness is popping up here and there and how advanced these things are going, and maybe just making sure like one rogue species that gets smart doesn't ruin the entire planet.
Yeah. Just like you know, and like we've made the analogy, and we've talked about the analogy before of like the human experience and like what's going on here being like a disease, or it could be like a disease. Like if we were to get out into the cosmos and infect the rest of our neighborhood
with our domineering, warlike spirit.
And that's why they may be making sure they're coming back. They're checking on us. They're making sure we're not getting to the point where we can destroy enough. Like, just like if there's a cancer cell, we try to prevent it from spreading. We try to prevent its influence in the body.
Yeah, yeah.
They're there to prevent our destructive influence in the galactic universal body.
Yeah.
What a great way to end a podcast.
Dude, right? So that's just the start of this podcast that I've been checking out. So I'm going to comb through the rest of it.
Check out this Jack Symes.
Yeah. No, it's good. I want to check the rest of that too. So between these episodes, like, dude, there's so much material to mine here for like,
I definitely want to get to you. I definitely want to get you this crop circle stuff.
Yeah.
I think you'd find
keep
it
working on it too. Like, I want more. Like, I would love to.
I want to get it down. And
if it grows to a whole episode, so be it. Like,
for sure. And I probably will, because I've been actually just
digging in.
tons of stuff.
Well, I'm
I've
excited.
got a bunch of pictures and videos.
And I don't want to give it short shrift by like forcing you to like stick it into a small segment.
Slot,
But
no, I think we got 200 or we got what 2 hours 16 minutes here.
So hopefully this makes up for the short episode last time. But this was fun. And dude, talking about UFOs is just one of my favorite things. It just it gets my imagination just like flowing. And it
opens things up.
It's just so fun to talk about. Like the possibilities are endless. And like it's great because I know it's stupid to believe anything 100%. So like it's just idea space. It's just possibility.
Yep.
I have so much fun with it. And I hope you guys had fun listening to it.
Check us out on Instagram and Facebook. We post all of we let everybody know when our posts go live on Facebook and Instagram. So you can listen to us on anywhere you get your podcasts, YouTube, Rumble as well, if you want some video content to go along with the podcast.
Join the conversation. Let us know what you thought of this episode. Like, what did you think of Lue's takes? What did you think of Sheehan's takes here?
What did you think of our takes?
Did you think that UFO or that alien look real? I don't know. Like I could go either way on it. So what do you guys think? Is any of you like a special effects specialist? Like, let us know. Send us a message at hosts@dualitycheck.net through email, or message us, DM us on Instagram, or you can just comment on YouTube.
Yep. And go ahead and
hear from you guys.
Check out our website at dualitycheck.net. It's got all of our episodes on there. We're going to have all of our links and everything.
All the show notes.
Posted with everything.
All the video links. Yep. Everything that we've been talking about. And we will see you guys next week. Peace. Adios.